Welcome to this episode of Digital Dialogs with Gururaj and Vinayak Khadye. I'm your host Vinayak Khadye. Before we begin with the podcast, here is a brief introduction of Guru and I. Gururaj Rao is a well-respected professional with more than 2 decades of experience in CXO roles in banking, financial services, and insurance companies in India. I have more than 2 decades of experience in leadership roles in consulting, insurance industry, and also as a founder of a startup in edtech space. In Digital Dialogues podcast series, Gururaj and I go beyond jargons and buzzwords in the digital world and bring to the fore the true meanings of these terms. We discuss models, methodologies, technologies, architectures, case studies, and challenges and issues associated with digital initiatives which can help you as a decision maker. Welcome all to this new episode of Digital Dialogues with Gururaj and Vinayak. And today we are going to discuss, primarily the organization structure. Okay, that um, typically organizations have when they embark on their journey of digital transformation or various digital initiatives. And what we have seen in recent times that uh, a new role is emerging in organizations, and more organizations are lapping up that role, and that is chief digital officer. Okay, so chief digital officer typically is responsible for driving digital initiatives, and we'll discuss, of course, in today's episode about the need for this role, what are the roles and responsibilities as part of this role, and what challenges and conflicts that it can lead to within organizations, and of course how organizations typically can manage it. But before we start this, Guru, I mean, over the last 30, 40 years that we have seen, our respective corporate careers, uh, the technology function, within companies have taken different shapes and forms. Okay, so when probably we started our career, we had MIS or data processing function within the organization. The head of that
PDP.
function, I mean, it didn't even existed as an independent function reporting to the CEO. Um, Rather, it was part of, typically it used to be part of CFO function. Then, of course, we had IT and IT heads coming in, and they were now then in last 15, 20 years, they're often been replaced by a more, let's say, larger role like CXO in terms of CIOs and CTOs. Okay, and now of course the CDOs have come in. So in before we discuss actually the CDO role, let's spend a couple of minutes on the CIO and CTO roles. In financial services organization, typically I've seen especially in insurance or uh, you know investment banking or similar, or even banks perhaps, uh, people are called heads of tech functions typically are called CTOs and CIOs, and not CIOs. And the reason for that is because already existed a CIO, okay, in the form of chief investment officer. So people didn't want to confuse this information technology head with the CIO or the chief investment officer. But I have still seen some organizations having two different these two different roles, CIOs and CTOs. So in your experience, do you see any uh, larger difference between these two roles, or they're just same name, I mean two different names for the same function?
Well, see, you can have a CIO and a CTO in an organization.
Okay.
Uh, you, depending upon the responsibility that you want to bring up. See, after all, when we talk about org structures, We talk about the objectives of the structure. We talk about the roles and responsibilities or a RASI matrix of the structure, the skills that are involved, and also the people who come together and how they would progress within that function. So all these principles of an organization structure, uh, would work. And depending upon the scale and the maturity of an organization, we would have the roles being defined. And nothing is cast in stone. After a few years, the organizations would create different structures, modify them depending upon the need. So when I look at the typical role of a CIO, I would put it, I mean, when I look at a CIO or a CTO, I look at it as just one level below the CEO. Okay, so there is a lot of expectation from that kind of a role to have a broad vision with regard to the organization. Okay, it's not just a depth in terms of the functional skills or competence, but also the breadth with regard to the vision of how the function contributes to the organization, and uh, the the ability to manage stakeholder interactions, especially at the board level and at the investor level, because technology has become such an important aspect that not just regulations wise, but also from a strategy standpoint, most organizations, most industries have started having technology as a mandatory item in the board meetings. And hence it's necessary for a CIO or a CTO, whoever it is, whatever nomenclature we may use, to have the ability to engage with the board of directors. Similarly, for regulated industries like financial services, the regulations themselves mandate that one person has to be nominated uh, as being responsible for the usage of technology in the organization. And investor relations have also become increasingly important because the various analyst interactions, or the calls that happen after the results are announced, etc., uh, require a lot of discussion on technology, and that reflects in the market position of the organization. I mean, the expectations, the potential earnings, etc. So given these expectations, I would say that first of all, we have to peg the skills of the CIO or the CTO at that level, at that CXO level, just below the CEO. And when we talk about that, I would say that for the CEO, there has to be one person, whatever be the nomenclature, who is responsible for the overall technology within the organization. I mean, the moment you create two, three things, the CEO's attention and the energy gets diluted with regard to the function, and it becomes more of managing the multiple people and the equations that go along with that, right? So it's necessary for the CEO, for any technology discussion, to have one person to go to. Okay, and
No, that's a
frankly
very valid
speaking,
point.
yeah, and frankly speaking, let me just state, my engineering background does not tell me what is the difference between IT and digital.
Yeah. So we will come to that, but
Okay,
we will
that's,
come to that,
yeah. So
but
I
but
would say
where
that so I would say that CIO and CTO, I mean, you could have one nomenclature at the higher level, and the next level you could have the other nomenclature. You can, I mean, but one reporting into the other. So see, uh, in one of the organizations that I was designated as a CIO, and we had a group CTO. Okay, so that
no,
was
but
absolutely okay.
in that case, probably what you're referring to, you still had to, different entities. I'm, primarily referring to single entity where, you have these two roles sometimes, CIO,
Yeah,
CTOs. Of course, most of the financial services adopted CTO as a top designation, to drive technology function. Where what I've seen though is that, wherever there are uh, there is a CIO and CTO function, then CIO function is more business facing. Okay, where you know CIOs typically talk in business language, and uh, probably they would look at information technology as an enabler, and hence work with business to create a blueprint and strategy for the company to adopt technology over next three, 2 3 or whatever years that you have. And then CIO would oversee this entire thing. Okay. uh, so it's primarily business language, new initiatives. Of course, there would be business as usual responsibilities in terms of maintenance of existing IT setup. Technology, on the other hand, when we talk about CTO roles, okay, they are more, from the execution perspective, okay, or more so actual hardcore uh, uh, development of softwares or implementation of IT applications, and then of course taking calls on the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure or information security. So sometimes organizations tend to separate these roles. Maybe the reason could be that that CTO is unable to communicate with the business, okay, the business in business language, the need and for information technology, show direction, show path for adoption of information technology. So these could be the reasons, in my opinion. Now since you've although in your context there were two different legal entities, but I mean, did you see uh, uh, a difference in the role of you as a CIO and, let's say, what the group CTO was doing in terms of managing multiple CIOs, and of course his reporting in terms of the group CEO, or so were they very different in your experience,
No,
or
not
you were
exactly.
more or less doing the same, or you guys were more or less doing the same role, only that your scale and level was different?
Yeah,
Was
I
that the
would say so. Yeah, yeah. I could not see the difference in the nomenclature between the CIO and the CTO. Okay.
okay?
So that's what I would say. But yes, I mean, when you're the CTO of a large group with multiple organizations and across multiple countries, etc., the complexity and the expectations are slightly different, or much
Correct.
different as
Correct.
compared to what you see at an organization, at an individual organization level. So
Correct.
that difference did exist. Uh, at the same time, I would also believe that as I said earlier, there has to be one person who is overall responsible,
Very true.
and yeah, and there could be others who supplement within that particular function. So uh, I mean, I'm okay with calling whatever nomenclature, but the CEO should have a single clear person who will answer
Accountability.
everything about
Yeah.
technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
So that is clear.
So I think more or less there is an agreement, or consensus that sometimes so essentially CIO and CTO roles are more or less the same. Sometimes it is the organization need, accommodation of various people may
That
lead
is
you to
very much, yeah.
create these two roles, etc.
Yeah, I mean
Sometimes
the limitations of people, some
and
legacy issues,
limitations of
all those are fine.
and
Yeah,
and limitations of people. Very true. Very true. So now with
absolutely.
this backdrop, let's now look at CDO role. Okay, of late, in the last 5-10 years, this new entity, I mean this new role has come up, right? And it has a lot of, any new role that comes up, has a lot of glamour associated with the role, and a lot of IT and tech professionals then easily gravitate towards, I mean, I've seen people would want to call themselves as CDOs rather than CIOs and CTOs. Okay, But now more often than not, we see that there are these two roles which exist, okay, in organizations. So I've seen organizations uh, having both CIO slash CTO and CDOs in place. Okay, so if we agree that the CIO and CTO role, okay, is essentially driving IT strategy, executing, uh, you know, IT initiatives, managing budgets associated with information technology, function. Okay, what is the role for what is the role of CDO in that case, and how is it very different from a CIO or a CTO role?
Sure. See, I mean, I believe that there are valid reasons for the conceptualization and the uh, usage of the CDO role and the function. Uh, when we talk about, I mean, we spoke in the previous episodes also, what is digitalization? I mean, how does it impact the organization overall in a comprehensive way, right? So when we want an organization to digitalize, there is an overall transformation that's required, right? From the strategic to the um the operational to the tactical, everything put together, right? So, and across various aspects, whether it is uh, the service offerings, the customer segments, the channels, the customer experience, employee experience, everything put together. So, to drive this transformation, you do need a particular focus, right? So, for that focus, if you want to call that transformation function as a digital function, absolutely fine. And it's essential for the CEO as well, that he has to keep the business as usual running at full speed and at the same time transform the organization on various aspects. Okay, so from that angle, from the overall organizational transformation angle, I would consider this role particularly to be a very useful one and adding great value. However, as I made a brief comment earlier, from a pure technology perspective, I do not see the difference between IT and digital. After all, applications are applications, infrastructure is infrastructure. Uh, you know, the performance, resilience, the uh, security, everything is the same. I mean, the activities with regard to technology do not change. And if you are going to do this in two pockets or more than two pockets, then you are inviting a lot of friction, lot of uh, arbitrage, and all those things that will go together when you have similar tasks being performed in multiple places within the same organization. So that is something which I'm not, very comfortable with. I believe that the technology activities, the technology decisions need to happen in one place, and because there should be one technology accountability. Okay, so very clear. Something works, does not work, works poorly, needs to be improved, needs to be monitored. All that should happen with one accountability.
Yeah. So we'll come to the challenges and conflicts little later, but let's dwell a little more
So
on
so
the
yeah,
the,
so
the
when
core
I yeah,
role
so
of
when
the
I
CDO.
yeah,
Yeah.
so in summary, I believe that a chief digital officer is very, very useful from a organizational transformation perspective. Okay, who brings in the absolutely necessary focus on large initiatives, the impacts on various parts of the organization. How does it impact the the external facing interactions, the customer experiences, the distributor experiences? How does it impact the channels, the uh, servicing aspects, the operational efficiency of the organization, everything put together. So that aspect is very, very critical, and I believe a CDO can and is adding a lot of value out there.
Yeah. So, so while we are, we also discussed probably why organizations look for, this kind of role. So one point that you brought out was obviously the focus. Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
another important element, in my opinion, is also probably the mindset. Okay.
Mm,
Uh, so if particularly an organization is an old organization in terms of in terms of its existence, okay, in that case, uh, probably the mindset of technology function, okay, is to maintain and keeping, as they say, the lights on, okay, rather than tinkering and changing, not tinkering, but in fact bringing about radical changes
mm,
to the IT landscape. Okay, so the old mindset typically could be just make sure that maintain the status quo, things are ensure that things are running fine, and probably CEOs need when in a digital world, obviously you need to move with the speed of
yeah.
at a different speed. So you need people who can probably bring a speed and agility to the function, and bring about change, okay, which probably a
Uh,
conventional IT and technology function may not be ready. So this could be one reason why a CDO role, a separate CDO role could be.
I
Any other things that
Yeah.
come to your mind?
Yeah, I would actually slightly modify that statement. Okay. I would
Okay.
say yes, I agree with your bigger part that a mindset change is required, or maybe was required in the IT function. Uh, Not necessarily with regard to new things, but with regard to being able to buy things. Okay. Earlier, predominantly the mindset was to build stuff. Okay, host stuff internally, do everything yourself. Okay. Uh, Whereas in the digital world, you've got a lot of SaaS offerings, PaaS offerings, IaaS offerings. You need to also be able to experiment faster and fail faster. Okay. I the only difference I'm trying to make is that IT people, I think, were even in those days willing to and very happy to learn new stuff. Not that they did not want to, because I mean that's why people, I guess most people work in IT, because you learn to you
Constantly
get to
learning
learn
new
a
things.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so that was the slight difference I would make. And you need to move with a lot of speed. You need to work with a lot of external partners. You need to try out a lot of concepts and have the ability to work in a bit of ambiguity. I mean, you can't wait for a well-defined, well-bound requirements document, or you say that I'll take 6 months to procure a couple of servers and storages, etc., etc. So, given that scenario, I think yes, the IT team, the technology people needed to move ahead. However, the answer, as I say, is not to create another team. Right. So the answer is to you know create a single accountable function and get the necessary skills into that particular team, or the mindset into the particular team. So that is something which I would believe uh, should be. I mean, it has to be a win-win for everyone out there. For the CEO to move ahead with a lot of speed that technology developments would allow, uh, and for the technology teams to deliver on those expectations. Whether well defined, whether short term, whether long term, doesn't matter. Yeah, so it has to happen. So that is one important aspect. And when we are discussing about the technology function, and the expectations, growing expectations that came along with it. As I said, there were a lot of expectations on external interactions, right? Whether it was the board level, the investor level, the partner level. Uh, I mean, the technology team can't say that, I will work only with the IBMs and the Microsofts of the world. You should be able to work with people who are just 5, 10 member shops or whatever else, and also work with, new guys and various things. So that ability, uh, would also be required. And hence, you needed a leader, you needed a CXO who's able to handle all those external interactions and manage the expectations. So I think that's something which, if, as you said, some of the CIOs and CTOs were able to do it and call themselves CDOs, so that becomes very important. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, and we should also remember that in the last 10, 15 years, along with the growth of all this digitalization and other stuff, the emphasis on security, on governance, on performance of the systems, all that has also increased. And hence, the need to have in-depth engineering knowledge, technology skills, in spite of actually, depending on external sources, cloud and all that, right? Uh, Increased for organizations. Yeah. So, you need to get more and more competence as well as understanding of all these aspects of technology as well.
Okay. Yeah. So just to summarize our discussion so far, the need for CDO roles, as we discussed, arose maybe one focus. Uh, Organizations needed focus. Second is the mindset in terms of dealing with uh, you know business as usual, IT landscape vis-a-vis dealing with uh, a rapidly changing world where organizations or the function head needs to bring in not only the mindset in terms of trying out new things, but also bring the agile, not necessarily the conventional agile methodology, but agility and speed in its approach, as you said, and also dealing with not just uh, large IT shops, but also innovators. Okay, so that requires a sort of perhaps a different a setup within the technology team. Okay, and that's why probably a separate role in the form of CDO is created. So I think these are some very good points. Okay, as to why there is the need for a CDO role. Now